The year is 1881. Dust devils dance across the parched plains, a silent symphony of the untamed West. Whispers travel on the wind, whispers of a name that strikes fear and fascination, Big-Nose George Curry. His crimes, a litany of audacious heists and cold-blooded murders, have cemented his place in the dark heart of the Wild West. The American West, a land of vast opportunity and unforgiving challenges, served as both a breeding ground and a battleground for individuals like Big-Nose George. The allure of quick riches and the promise of a life unburdened by societal constraints drew countless souls to this untamed frontier. In this environment, where survival often hinged on ruthlessness and cunning, men like Big-Nose George Curry thrived. The early life of Big-Nose George Curry remains a tapestry, woven with threads of speculation and shrouded in the mists of time. What we do know is that Curry, whatever his true origins, emerged from the crucible of youth, hardened and resourceful. The details of Curry's adolescence, like whispers in a windstorm, are difficult to discern. Regardless of his exact path, it is clear that Curry's formative years were marked by a growing restlessness, a yearning for something more than the mundane existence he seemed destined for. It was during this time, amidst the sprawling cattle ranches and dusty saloons that dotted the western landscape, that Curry likely received the moniker Big Nose. As Curry matured, so too did his ambition. The Wild West, with its lax law enforcement and boundless opportunities for the unscrupulous, offered a tempting alternative to the drudgery of honest labour. By the early 1870s, his name had become synonymous with outlawry. The American West, a vast and unforgiving landscape, became both a hunting ground and a hideout for Big-Nose George Curry and his gang. One of their most daring heists targeted a Union Pacific train near Como, Wyoming. Disguised and heavily armed, Curry and his men lay in wait, their nerves as taut as piano wire. The audacity of the robbery sent shockwaves through the nation, cementing Curry's reputation as a dangerous outlaw. Lawmen, spurred by public pressure and the promise of a hefty reward, intensified their efforts to bring Curry and his gang to justice. As Curry's notoriety grew, so too did his ruthlessness. He ruled his gang with an iron fist, demanding unwavering loyalty and punishing dissent with swift and brutal efficiency. Whispers of Curry's brutality spread like wildfire through the saloons and mining camps of the West. But even as Curry's legend grew, so too did the noose of justice tighten around his neck. The life of an outlaw, once filled with the allure of freedom and easy riches, had become a double-edged sword for Big-Nose George Curry. The constant threat of capture, the ever-present danger, and the isolation from civilized society began to wear on him. The price of freedom, he discovered, was a heavy burden to bear. The year 1878 marked a turning point in Big-Nose George Curry's career of crime. Robert Widowfield, a deputy sheriff known for his unwavering commitment to justice, had been hot on the trail of Curry and his gang for months. What followed was a chaotic and bloody confrontation that would leave an indelible mark on the town's history. The rough-hewn buildings of Carbon, Wyoming stood stark against the backdrop of the desolate plains. Inside a dimly lit saloon, Big-Nose George Curry and his remaining gang huddled around a table, their faces etched with a mixture of bravado and fear. Widowfield, a man known for his unwavering determination, wasted no time in confronting the outlaws. The outlaws, trapped like rats in a barrel, weighed their options, each man acutely aware that their next move could be their last. As the sun began its slow descent, casting long shadows across the dusty streets of Carbon, the tension reached a fever pitch. Widowfield, his patience wearing thin, called for the outlaws to surrender. Currie, his nerves steeled by years of outlawry, decided to make a desperate gamble for freedom. With a roar that echoed through the saloon, Currie and his men burst from the batwing doors, 6 shooters blazing. In the chaos and confusion of the shootout, fate dealt a cruel hand. A stray bullet, fired in the heat of battle, found its mark, striking Deputy Sheriff Robert Widowfield in the chest. The remaining outlaws, their escape route now blocked by a wall of angry townsfolk, surrendered to the inevitable. News of Widowfield's murder and Currie's capture spread like wildfire across the west. Currie, his face now a familiar sight on wanted posters across the west, was transported to Rawlins, Wyoming to await trial. Inside the cramped courtroom, amidst the stifling air and the murmur of the crowd, Big-Nosed George Currie faced a jury of his peers. The judge, his voice echoing through the hushed courtroom, sentenced Big-Nosed George Currie to hang. The date was set, April 2nd, 1881. Big-Nosed George Currie, the notorious outlaw who had terrorized the West, was to meet his maker at the end of a rope. Rawlins, Wyoming, braced itself for the execution, a collective holding of breath as the day of reckoning arrived. The gallows, hastily erected in the town square, stood as a grim monument to frontier justice. Its rough-hewn timbers, weathered by the elements, seemed to creak under the weight of expectation. A hush fell over the crowd as Currie, his hands bound, his face a mask of stoicism, was led to the platform. The hangman, a burly man with a face etched with the weariness of his profession, adjusted the noose with practiced indifference. Currie, his gaze fixed on the distant horizon, seemed unmoved by the spectacle unfolding around him. He had lived his life on his own terms, embraced danger and courted death. Now, as the final curtain drew near, he met his fate with a chilling composure. The crowd, a motley assemblage of townsfolk, lawmen and curiosity seekers, watched in morbid fascination. Some came seeking justice, a sense of closure for the crimes Currie had committed. Others were drawn by the macabre allure of the spectacle, eager to witness the moment when a life was extinguished. The noose was placed around Currie's neck, the rough hemp chafing against his skin. The hangman stepped back, his hand hovering over the lever that would send Currie plummeting into the abyss. A collective gasp arose from the crowd, a wave of anticipation rippling through the square. But something went wrong. The platform beneath Currie's feet, hastily constructed and poorly reinforced, gave way under his weight. Instead of a swift drop, Currie found himself dangling just inches above the ground, the rope biting into his flesh, his body contorting in a desperate struggle for air. Panic swept through the crowd, cries of dismay mingled with the groans of the condemned man as the gruesome reality of the situation sunk in. The hangman, his face ashen, frantically tried to rectify the situation, but his efforts were in vain. The botched execution had become a macabre spectacle, a public display of incompetence that shocked even the most hardened observers. Currie, his face turning purple, his eyes bulging from their sockets, thrashed wildly, his muffled cries for mercy swallowed by the growing din. Minutes stretched into an eternity as the crowd watched in horrified silence. The air, thick with tension and the stench of fear, crackled with a palpable sense of unease. The lawmen, their faces etched with a mixture of horror and shame, finally managed to free Currie from his ordeal. But the damage was done. The botched execution had transformed Currie from a condemned outlaw into a figure of pity, a stark reminder of the fallibility of frontier justice. The botched execution should have marked the end of Big-Nosed George Currie's story, a final punctuation mark on a life of crime and violence. But the Wild West, it seemed, had one final gruesome act in store for the condemned outlaw. In a macabre twist of fate, Currie's story was far from over. His body, broken but not yet at peace, was delivered into the hands of Dr. John Eugene Osborne, the local physician and surgeon. Osborne, a man with a scientific curiosity that bordered on the macabre, saw in Currey's remains not a condemned criminal, but a unique opportunity for medical study. Osborne's interest went beyond the typical anatomical explorations. He saw in Currey's remains a chance to further his understanding of the human skull, particularly the effects of criminality on its structure. Phrenology, the now discredited study of skull shape and its supposed connection to mental traits, was a subject of intense fascination at the time. Osborne, eager to make his mark on the burgeoning field, set about preserving Currey's skull for further study. Working with a crude but effective set of tools, Osborne meticulously removed the flesh from Currey's skull, boiling the bones to ensure their preservation. The process, carried out in the back room of his office, was a far cry from the sterile environment of modern-day laboratories, the air thick with the stench of decay, and the cloying aroma of formaldehyde bore witness to Osborne's macabre task. Word of Osborne's activities spread through Rawlins like wildfire, a morbid curiosity gripping the town. Some were repulsed by the doctor's actions, viewing his treatment of Currey's remains as a desecration. Others, their fascination outweighing their revulsion, crowded around Osborne's office, eager for a glimpse of the outlaw's skull. Osborne, undeterred by the controversy swirling around him, continued his work, transforming Currey's remains into a collection of grisly artifacts. The top of Currey's skull, carefully sawed off to allow for examination of the brain cavity, became a morbid ashtray, a conversation piece in Osborne's office. The skin, tanned and treated, was fashioned into a pair of shoes and a medical bag, a grotesque testament to Osborne's macabre sense of humour. The shoes, crafted from the skin of Currey's legs, were said to have been worn by Osborne himself on special occasions, a macabre reminder of the outlaw's fate. The medical bag, made from a section of Currey's chest, became a prized possession, a gruesome symbol of Osborne's profession and his unsettling fascination with the criminal mind. For years, these artifacts remained in Osborne's possession, a source of both fascination and revulsion. They were a tangible link to a darker chapter in the West's history, a reminder of the brutality of the era and the thin line that separated justice from vengeance. But as the years turned into decades, the memory of Big-Nosed George Currey began to fade, his name relegated to the dusty pages of history books and the whispered tales of old-timers. The artifacts, however, remained, their existence a testament to the enduring power of the macabre and the human fascination with the darker side of our nature. They served as a grim reminder that even in death there is no escaping the long shadow of the past. The tale of Big-Nosed George Currey is a journey through the heart of the untamed West, a stark reminder of an era where justice was as harsh and unforgiving as the land itself. His story, a tapestry woven from ambition, desperation, and a thirst for freedom, continues to captivate and unsettle more than a century after his demise. From his audacious heists to his violent end and the unsettling fate of his remains, Currey's life and death offer a glimpse into a bygone era, a time when the lines between good and evil were often blurred. Currey's story serves as a cautionary tale, a reminder that the pursuit of freedom without regard for the law can lead to a dark and lonely path. His crimes, driven by greed and a disdain for authority, left a trail of shattered lives and stoked the fires of fear in the hearts of settlers and lawmen alike. Yet even in death, he could not escape the relentless grip of history. The macabre fate of his remains, transformed into ghoulish artifacts, ensured that his name would forever be associated with the grotesque and the bizarre. Today, the legend of Big-Nosed George Currey continues to intrigue and disturb, a potent reminder of the dark undercurrents that ran through the veins of the Wild West. His story, passed down through generations, has become a part of the fabric of American folklore, a cautionary tale whispered around campfires and recounted in hushed tones. And as we delve into the annals of history, we are left to ponder the complex legacy of a man who, in life and in death, embodied both the allure and the brutality of the American frontier. His story, like the windswept plains he once roamed, remains a haunting and unforgettable testament to the enduring power of the past.